Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, aka Caliban, and when you're in space, space hippies are just hippies. Joining me on the show, as usual, is my co-host. She's also the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to Discoverage.
Thank you.
It's great to have you back.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I didn't do to do something else last weekend that I wish that I did do and skipped last weekend. I drove from Washington State to Minnesota.
Whoa.
To help my friend move all of her stuff back. She doesn't know, she can't find this. So we'll gossip a bit.
Okay.
She's going to Sweden for grad school.
Oh, nice.
I get there on Wednesday.
What kind of study?
Public health. Oh. University of Lund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. I get there, not packed.
Okay.
We're not packed. It's Wednesday. We're leaving on Friday.
Okay.
She also says, I have an office job. I took PTO. She says, I thought we'd take at least 5 days to do the drive. No, because I have to be at work on Monday.
Yeah.
I also have a root canal on Monday, which I had to call and reschedule to tomorrow.
Come on, hurry. I got to get back and get my teeth drilled.
It's like, I've literally got something going on. Like, I have to go. But I was like, I'm going to try to soak up all of her stress. So I said, don't worry about it. Let me make some calls. Mm-hmm. Get home to Minnesota, find out she has COVID. I've been in a car with the woman for 4 days, sleeping in a tent with her for 3 nights.
Yeah.
But I'm still tested negative, so I'm coming out on top. But I did skip this podcast and Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
We also found out day of picking up the trailer that U-Haul trailers are only supposed to drive at like 55 miles per hour.
Okay. Really?
So I was like,
what?
Ooh.
All right. Taking your time then.
Just a lot going on. Yeah, we pick up the trailer. First 2 things she does: hit another U-Haul trailer on the way out of the parking lot, and hit her own car with the U-Haul trailer when we got to her house.
Okay.
It's been I have a lot of stories.
They always say, do you want the insurance? I don't want the insurance, but something could happen.
And she got it, and thank God, because I did, frankly, it's a miracle that we made it to Minnesota without getting an fender bender. I was like accepting. I was like, at some point, we're going to dent someone's bumper. And you know what? It's not my insurance. It's going to have to be.
That's true. That's true.
I love her to death. She does need to get a little bit of a grip. However, it was very nice to come home and watch. I thought last week's episode of Star Trek was lovely. I thought this week's was lovely.
Yeah.
I feel like I always manage to be like, I'm always like, I have something big, like this girl, she's going to need help packing, and I just can't do the podcast. And then it's like an episode that has been written for me.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I feel like every time I miss the show, I come back and I'm like, oh, no way, a Spock episode? Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was perfect for you. And, of course, the ramifications of that episode will continue to be dealt with, on the series going forward. Not so much this week, but I'm sure we'll see how that affects things. But you liked it. Before we move on, any other comments? How do you feel about the seeming consummation of the Spock-Chapel relationship?
I feel weird.
Yeah.
I'm very torn because obviously these 2 actors, phenomenal performances from both of them, powerhouses, frankly. I think they're doing an amazing job. I think it's amazing. It was amazing in last week's episode. I don't remember the titles, to just watch, Chapel's face. Like, Ethan Peck obviously was doing the full, like, kind of comedy bit, but to watch her just think, even with no dialogue, was amazing. So it's hard because I love watching them on screen together. Like, it's fantastic. Yeah. I get that I have been bracing myself for I feel like they're gonna get some blowback as far as like canon. But this is what I was expecting, is for them to kind of have this like flirty thing, kind of the kiss certainly surprised me.
Yeah.
That was a shocker. But I told I told my partner about I was like, you'll never guess what happened on Star Trek this week, and told him everything. And he said, Spock's got that dog in him. I was like, apparently, who knew?
Yeah.
I know.
I think they did this a little with his relationship with T'Pring, and the last time we had a Goofy Spock episode and dealt with T'Pring, which was last season, and they did this a little, but I hope they do it more if he does decide to go for it. Like, I don't know how flexible Vulcan betrothals are. It kind of seemed like they weren't very flexible in TOS, but maybe you can, we were on a break. So maybe he can pursue this relationship with her. But I'd like to see more of him negotiating this relationship with a human, because he does have that dog in him. But you don't, except for the kind of...
One thing about Spock that we know.
Well, his dad had it too, but you see,
James
like...
Kirk put out that hand for the handshake, and he said, bet,
Yeah, right. But we saw like a little bit of like tenderness and kind of romance with T'Pring, but it's still like, I would like to raw dog you. He's like still sort of, he's still Vulcan, but he must feel these things, like feel these attachments. And so her being such a like an emotional and sort of open character and him being close, like I would... Canon be damned, I'd like to see it go forward. I don't care about canon. My only problem is like the more that we, sort of broaden the characters in the present tense, it makes them look even worse in the past. And there's nothing we can do about that. It's one thing to have like the old crew quarters, like Uhura's, living in a little airplane bathroom, and now she's got like a big quarters like everybody else. That in your head, you just go, yeah, big deal. But to see Chapel go from such like a broad and full character and expressive to just being, Majel Barrett, who's great, in other ways, but is just sort of like wistfully looking at Spock. It's like, that's all from this? Like, they're going to have like this amazing romance, and it's going to just turn into her dodging bowls of Plomeek soup. Like, again, there's nothing we can really do about that, but...
I mean, it's hard. I see it. I mean, Chapel, even now, she's got the pining going, like I see... Yeah. I see how because sometimes it takes like, in every other, because we only ever see Chapel in the original series pretty much when Spock is also there. Because pretty much, right? I mean...
Yeah, there's one or two episodes where we delve into her a little more, but yeah.
I feel like people act sometimes are like, it's like that thing of, it's going to be like, and maybe not after, because they were talking about Schrodinger's relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
But that thing of like having when people are like, I have an ex, but he never called it a relationship. Like, I feel like that is her like energy in TOS. Like, she's like, something happened here. Something happened to me, to us.
I'm not single, but my boyfriend is. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
relationship status, it's complicated. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I see it happening, and I see how Chapel, while being like a strong character in this series, could be very much like kind of a little bit more like meek around Spock, like in the future.
Yeah. Maybe he just he pulls her aside and is just like, we don't ever talk about this again. You understand? Like, I'm being very as serious as I can be. We don't talk about this. Yeah. So who knows? But anyway, well, it's great that you're alive, and the tooth thing went okay.
Oh, the tooth thing hasn't happened to me yet. That's happening tomorrow morning.
That's okay. That's coming up. Okay.
But I will say I am no longer in any pain. I did last time that I canceled the podcast when I was at Taylor Swift weekend.
Yeah.
I was in literally so much pain. I went to the dentist. He was like, "Yeah, you were probably in peak pain over the weekend." I was like, "Oh." Boots on the ground at US Bank Stadium at the Eras Tour, just like
great. Yeah, Mika's,
so it'll be fine. I think I'll probably fall asleep.
Mika's at Beyonce tonight.
Oh, We almost bought tickets to Beyonce. My friend who is here for a few weeks home for a few weeks before she goes to Sweden, and I'm glad that we didn't because she certainly has COVID. I keep testing negative. She definitely has it. She's testing positive, but I'm glad we didn't. That must be so much fun. I was wondering if I was going to be able to hear it because last time I was here, I was at her concert last time she was here, and they could hear it like in the suburbs. I remember.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and she played at TCF Bank last time too.
Yeah, that's right. I guess you're kind of close. So, so anyway, I guess we should talk about Star Trek. Usually we talk about the news in the world of Star Trek at the beginning of the show, and what the news is. The news is that both the actors and the writers are on strike. Both the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA have said that's enough, and they're striking. So most Hollywood productions that require actors and writers, which is most of them, have been halted. How does that affect the world of Star Trek? Well, it's hard to say exactly. You and I, doing this every week, have been tracking a lot of the upcoming Star Trek productions, and it's true that some of them might be affected. As far as we know, Season 5 of Discovery is both complete and reshot as well, and so it should not require actors or writers to go forward. So there's that. I believe that the next season of Lower Decks has been fully recorded. And so will it come out when it was projected to come out initially? Maybe, maybe not. At this point, Star Trek or Paramount may be looking to move things around to try to spread the butter over the bread and make sure that they've got even amounts of Star Trek coming out. So we'll see. This obviously will put a halt to development of Starfleet Academy, the series, and Section 31, which just seems like it's getting farther and farther away from ever happening. Although I did see one gossip site that says that they believe that it has been commissioned and it will begin filming in October. It's one of these sites where they look at like the call sheets and the casting calls and things like that. And there is a CBS Studios production, which is a TV movie, which is set to start filming in October. Now, whether that will be affected, hopefully the strike will be over by then. But honestly, who knows? But the big irony is they've got an entire season of a Star Trek show all finished and ready to go, and they're not going to air it, and it's just sitting there. Star Trek Prodigy season 2. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we should buckle in for quite the long haul here, and I think that SAG is gonna be like, frankly, stop podcasting soon. But
hey, if actors want to come on, actors and writers want to come on this show and talk about their grievances, that is totally valid. They can do that.
Well, because with the UPS strike, like the Teamsters are going to go on strike, and like with all that stuff, I think we're buckling in for quite the long haul here.
Yeah.
Although I will say I did order a silly little hat for a cabin trip I have coming up, and if I could get that before UPS goes on strike, that'd be great. But my great uncle worked for UPS his whole life, and he was a member of the Teamsters his whole life. Support the unions. Listen to Casey Jones, the union scab.
Right. Yes.
Not the Johnny Cash one.
Yeah.
But no, I think that we're going to be buckled in for a long time here. I am selfishly glad that, Lower Decks is in the can and whatever else is in the can, like that's great. But
yeah,
I'm ready to cancel the second that SAG is like cancel the subscriptions to your streaming services. I'm canceling everything. Yeah. And I'm going to tell, I'm on a lot of my dad's, and I'm going to encourage him to do it too. Cause I'm just like, I'm done. And and there are productions going forwards who have agreed to SAG's demands. Like I read that there's an A24 movie that's still just like chugging along because they were like, of course, yeah, breaks, but check.
Yeah. There is, for some films there are some rules or some exceptions where you can do stuff. I read that like Ryan Murphy's new season of American Horror Story is like being completed and done like with people who are breaking the line, and he's like, well, it was mostly done, so it's like, all right, well, that's not how we're gonna get there. But so
they're crossing the picket line to finish it.
Yeah. And so I've seen a lot of Star Trek fans who are hopefully listening to this show, that's what we do the show for, who say like, well, should we not watch Star Trek, or should we just stop talking about Star Trek? And I've seen schools of thought in both directions on that. And I think the general idea is, well, obviously you still consume the stuff because the studios are looking at the numbers, streaming numbers, ratings, tickets. If you're going to go buy tickets to something, I don't think there's any point, and I agree with this idea, in not seeing the stuff. You're not hurting anybody to consume this stuff that's already been made. If anything, it will show the studios that, it is worth something. And even if they get a big payday now, the lack of paydays in the future will hopefully drive them back to the negotiating table. But I mean, I think it's down to your own personal philosophy and conscience, because I honestly don't think that we can really affect it either way, unless you show support, unless you, tweet with SAG-AFTRA hashtags, you on your social media, you talk about how they need to get what they deserve. You can support people in that way. But as far as they made it for you to see it. They want you to see the things that they made. I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't be able to watch things. Yeah. And I don't say that just because I've got a show that, covers this week to week.
And also, I haven't read it yet, but I saw today that SAG has released guidelines for influencers, not to call it ourselves influencers, but we do, a live show every week on Star Trek. And I think it's also just up until the point that SAG, I'm going to do whatever they say, frankly. This is a pro-union household. And, I'm going to do what they say.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It must be crazy to be at Comic-Con right now, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And Star Trek is at Comic-Con. Obviously, there are no actors there representing, but they are doing panels. There's a Strange New Worlds experience at the Paramount Plus Lodge. And so that end of it is continuing. There's nothing for them to do. They paid for the booths. They're going to do what they do. And it's a funny time for Star Trek and, I just mean Hollywood in general, but certainly Star Trek to be in, because Strange New Worlds is doing great. It's doing better than before. Last week we were talking about how they had cracked the top 10 of the Nielsen streaming. And the same is true of this week. They are back on right up there with Secret Invasion and Ted Lasso and Arnold Schwarzenegger's Fubar and, all the Netflix shows. So people are watching this show. So it's a weird position to be in. You feel powerless as a fan because you want, your actors and your writers and your creatives to get what they need and to get their fair compensation. But at the same time, you're like, what do I do? Do I not watch the show? Or do I watch the show? Will there ever be any more shows? Will we ever get this Michelle Yeoh movie? Who knows? It's frustrating.
Yeah.
If they want to cancel Yellowstone, though, that's fine. They can do that.
Thomas, you can take that one.
Yeah. Well,
it's a weird time to live in, I'm like, this might as well, at this point, I'm like, this might as well happen. And UPS too, let's go.
Yeah. Let's just everybody go on strike. That's what we want.
Yeah.
So anyway, do what you have to do in your own corner of the world. For us, we're going to talk about the 6th episode of the 2nd season of Strange New Worlds, an episode called Lost in Translation, and we're here to talk all about it. But first, a warning, listeners, we are setting a course for the spoiler zone. If you haven't seen the episode, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for Lost in Translation is, Uhura seems to be the only one who can hear a strange sound. When the noise triggers terrifying hallucinations, she enlists an unlikely assistant to help her track down the source. The episode was written by Onitra Johnson and David Reed. It was directed by Dan Liu, and the stardate for this week is 2394.8, and I can't believe that I'm 16 episodes in, and I finally realized these numbers don't mean anything. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, longtime Star Trek fan, although apparently not long enough to check the dates every week. But last week, the date was 1789.3. Now it's 2394.8. That would be months and months apart. They're obviously not months apart. And I finally Googled it, and people had been talking about this last year. I just missed it. But they're like, yeah, I don't think they mean anything. Part of their homage to the original series is having them just being picked randomly, which is apparently what happened on TOS as well. So... okay, anyway, I'm gonna still read them out. Here's a little trivia for you from this episode this week. We see, I think this is the first confirmation on screen that George Kirk did serve in Starfleet. Kirk and Sam, or James Kirk and George Samuel Kirk talk about their father and his service in Starfleet, particularly on the USS Kelvin. And speaking of cannon heads, Christopher Pike was promoted to fleet captain in this episode, at least just for this episode, and meets James Kirk just after an event that was mentioned in one line of the Menagerie Part 1. So put down your truncheons, cannon cops. We got it all figured out. What did you think, Ella, about Lost in Translation?
I liked it a lot. I mean, I had a really good time. I thought there was a bit like there's a bit much going on. Like there was, I felt like there was lots of like we've got Chapel and Spock, and also Kirk is there, and Lon knows him, knows his face, and Uhura's hearing things, and then we've got Una.
James Kirk meet Mr. Spock. Yeah.
And then we've got Una like in the engines, hating on space hippies.
What?
So there's a bit. I thought it was a little bit busy, but I have ADHD, so that's really good for me. So I stayed really zeroed in. Frankly.
It was busy, and this week's episode was 54 minutes. Last week's episode was like 61 minutes, and so it's interesting that last week's episode was a little more focused in terms of it's Spock's human, and then also at certain points, Chapel's going to go talk to the customer service aliens, and so you've got all that, and that was like an hour, and this was like A, B, C, D, and E stories, and yet it was 54 minutes. So plus with the return of Hemmer, so like I still don't know where all the time goes. I feel like in the old days, like I could tell you just beat by beat, act by act, when something's going to happen. They're having a speech, and it's like they're going to get a call on the communicator from the bridge saying, "Captain, there's a new development," because they got to get to the next thing. And like with these streaming episodes that are a little longer, you're sort of like, "Oh, okay, there's another act, okay." Oh, and then at the end of this one, they resolve the thing. Uhura's like, I did a good job. I'm gonna work. Station exploding through the window behind her, and then they had they had to wrap up the other three things, so they had to like go back to number one and Pelia, and then we had to go to the bar and like Jar Jar Binks meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we had to do all that, and so yeah, you were right. I felt that too. It was like a little like overstuffed, despite being a little shorter. I want to do it right now. I want to have the James Kirk conversation.
All right, let's do it.
Why are they doing this to us? Do you know what I mean? Why is this happening? Because let me put this in perspective for you. Garrick, one of everybody's favorite character. I don't remember exactly how many episodes. It was plus or minus 5 from 20. So let's say he was in 20 episodes, and there's 180 episodes of DS9. So he's basically in like 10% of the episodes. James Kirk has now been in 3 out of 16 episodes. To your math, he's in about 25%. He is essentially just like a guest character on the show. Is this just a season 2 thing in the way that like Pike and Spock and the Enterprise were in season 2 of Discovery? Or is this really are they setting him up to be a recurring character who then they will hand the ship to after X amount of time? Pike gets his face blown off or something. Like, they seem to be really in love with this guy who plays James Kirk, and they just keep bringing him back. And sure, this was a whole episode where like Jar Jar Binks meets Obi-Wan Kenobi, but his role could have been played by anybody. And if he's not important to the crew of the show, it should have been played by somebody. It should have been Ortegas being like, "You want a cookie? I'll tell you something. I've had tragedy in my life, but you gotta fight on." That could have been anybody, but it had to be James Kirk. So, like, how do you feel about James Kirk being there?
I don't know.
I don't like it.
I don't know how I feel.
I don't like it.
I don't know how I feel. I think a couple of things. I think that number one, it's just a fun cameo. Like, full stop.
It's not a cameo.
Fun.
Like, he's
and
literally...
it's a great. Well, no, and you're right, but it's a fun bit. And it's a good hook to draw other viewers in.
It's very possible that
James T. Kirk is here.
The streaming numbers
not just the rest of these losers. Yeah, we've got James T. Kirk. He's wearing the yellow too. It's like there's that. And there's also the fact that maybe they are maybe they're like testing the viewership testing, the reaction to
It's been
see
tested. He's been there. He spent 3 hours on a 16 hours of a show. It has been tested. Like,
what would
he is
happen,
here.
if we watch Pike's, if Pike's accident plays out and eventually the show, there's a vibe shift.
Well,
into Kirk being captain, I don't know.
The way that this show likes to like tell you about things and then take things that we know happened, like, oh, congratulations, you're fleet commander now or whatever. Like, I absolutely think that in the later seasons of the show, they will completely play out what happens to Pike. They'll cast all those people that were in the Discovery version of the scene. They'll restage it and do the entire thing. I absolutely think that'll happen. But like, he's basically. Did you watch Cheers at all? This is going back a little ways.
A little bit, not a lot, but a little, like reruns at my grandma's.
I feel like he's like they're trying to Woody Allen, or not Woody Allen. Yeah, go to Cheers. Woody Harrelson him into like Cheers. Like Woody Harrelson showed up in like the 4th season of Cheers, and Cheers was always pretty popular, but like it got really popular after that, like because it's Woody Harrelson. Like this, he was beginning his career. He obviously go on to like a lot of success, and he was funny and he was good, but Paul Wesley is no Woody Allen. He's not Woody Allen or Woody Harrelson, and he's just like part of the show now, and like I wish they'd get over it. Like he just hung out. Didn't he have a job to do? Like he yelled at his brother, they had a fight, and then he's just like, well, I was gonna get hammered. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, I'm not on my ship. My ship's over there. It feels like ramming it down our throat at this point. And one more thing, and then I'll never talk about him again. They have all the lines about like, when your dad said to me before he left to be on the USS Kelvin, and oh, you're always going into space, James Tiberius Kirk. None of this would seem weird if this was a brand new character that we didn't know at all. It would be weird that this character had a brother that was also on the ship, and they talked about all this stuff, and we're like, why do we care about your dad? Why is any of this important? This is like 100% fan service. And as far as the Woody Harrelson thing goes, one of Woody's middle names was Tiberius. He was Woody Huckleberry Tiberius Boyd. So
no way.
I don't know what else.
Huckleberry?
Well, it's a joke. He's from Indiana.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a little sick of it, and he's not going away at this point. Like he's just got to keep showing up. So
I also think this episode, if nothing else, there's gonna be payoff about La'an's thing, So I think we can expect him in at least one more episode. But they needed at least one thing of La'an being like, "Oh, hello, it's James."
Yeah, but
I know him.
But they have 10 years to get these characters from, 9 years, whatever, from here to TOS. And I never.
Not your father's Star Trek. We don't have 26 episodes.
Apparently it is. Apparently it is my father's Star Trek. Fucking James D. Kirk's on it. But I never thought that Uhura was going to be completely defined by her relationship with James Kirk. Like the whole point of doing a prequel was that we could just like tell brand new stories about these characters. Your dad is like suffused with the tie-in culture, and when he writes a book, he's probably like, well, I'll put this little thing in because remember the time that we went to get some tribbles or something? Right. But otherwise the plot is like a brand new plot. It's an original plot. It's something else. I'm making a new part of the world. You don't think in all the Lost Era novels, Jonathan Harriman's always saying things are going to happen on Tuesday, right? Like that's you take these characters and just go somewhere else with them. But instead it's just like, oh, hello, Mr. Spock. Oh, good to meet you. Sorry, I'm just mad about it, as you can tell. Other than that,
it is
A+. Great episode.
They spent a lot of time on it. A lot of time that could be used telling new stories, like you said.
This episode, and at this point, I'd have to go back all the way back through all of Star Trek and see the point where I'm going to come up with a cool name for this. Maybe it's just it's the Coker Horizon or something. But like, there's a point where you just can't write a Star Trek story without referencing other Star Trek stories, or not referencing, but like doing something they've already done. So this is basically Devil in the Dark, right? This is Devil in the Deuterium. We're doing something. We're being enterprising humans and we're going to explore space and we're ruining some poor aliens thing. And then it's also kind of um, night terrors from TNG. Remember the episode with Troy? She's at one moon and she's like flying through the thing. She has these weird dreams and it's like
The
aliens.
one where the ghost.
That's night terror. Wait, that is night terrors. What did I say? I don't remember the name of the Troy episode. I think it's night terrors. And so there's some aliens and they're caught on the other side of a wormhole, like in another universe, and they need like them to send them hydrogen or something like that to get out of this thing, this rift. And they can only communicate with her because of her telepathy. This reminded me of that a lot. There's also like speaking of Troy episodes, there's the Troy episode Eye of the Beholder, where a guy killed himself in the nacelle of the ship, and so she's having these weird dreams and she's seeing hallucinations of like people like trying to kill her and like trying to commit suicide like in the long
TNG is crazy.
Yeah, well, that was the 7th season one. They were really going for it. So it's just like I guess I'm complaining again. I wish that in the midst of all these A, B, and C, and D stories, we could find something that was really, I don't know, can you at this point? Like, can you find a story that has not been told? I feel like there's a lot of Discovery stories that were like, oh, that's really different and original. Like the whole thing with the 10C and their anomaly, and I laughed at the time, but they communicate by like farting emotions into each other and stuff like that. Like, it was like, oh, they're kind of going somewhere. But I don't know. I just felt like a lot of it was kind of derivative, and it's good to see Uhura and Celia Rose Gooding, get some more to do. But I hear a weird sound and I think I'm crazy. It's like they did that 2 episodes ago and tomorrow. So
I guess it also is like, it's not just Star Trek retelling story. It's like any story is gonna probably have been done in some way before,
Yes. The Book of Ecclesiastes, right? There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
And that was 2,500 years ago. So
yeah.
Actors, do you really writers, you guys don't deserve this money. Come on. We're arguing against the strike here. No, we're not.
We've come full circle.
The ship is really dark. Why is the ship always so dark? No, that's not really a real. I will complain about something though.
Okay.
What's up, the shaky cam? Let's cut that out. Like, what's up with the shaky cam?
When?
The entire episode, but definitely the episode where we're literally explaining what's going on. They go to. I was so excited because, and I don't know if it's because I really don't like their James Kirk, but every time I see Sam Kirk, I'm like, all right, yeah, Sam Kirk's back. Let's get some more Sam Kirk. Yeah. And they go to his, xenobiology lab because they're like, oh, we're looking for aliens. And he's explaining like, this idea that maybe they're communicating through the speech center of your brain. And this show loves spouting science facts that you can find on Wikipedia. Wernicke's area is the part of your brain that interprets language and signals. So they could have used that, but they just said that part of your brain, and like he's explaining the whole reason that they're here. Like, this is the whole point. This is the Data speech. This is the Spock speech. This is it. And the whole time the camera's like, don't get bored. Come on, everybody. Stay awake. Stay awake. I feel insulted.
That's so funny. I didn't notice that at all.
Well, it's in a lot of shows these days.
Well, and sometimes I do notice it, but just like this episode in particular, I was like, I don't recall. I was like, I genuinely didn't notice it at all, which is probably clearly for me it worked then. If I didn't notice it, that's a mark of a good. Clearly I was in the moment. I was feeling it.
Yeah. I'll give them this. Space symbols. They had space symbols. At the end, there's how'd you like to be the band that plays in the bar on the Enterprise?
I would love it.
Is that made up of crewmen or are they just like on a tour? They did have.
It's
Hey,
like how on a cruise ship
a
you
theater company
hire
did
like
come to
one
the Enterprise
person.
one time.
Yeah.
And like Space Hitler came with them. I guess they're in space. It's just Hitler. So, but anyway, they did a scene where they pan across a guy playing a drum kit, and he had like see-through, totally impractical cymbals. Like it wouldn't make a sound. The whole point of a cymbal is it's got to be a thing. And so they always have like, oh, let's have space instruments. I'm playing a purple violin that you can see through. So yeah, it's kind of fun. What do you think about Hammer returning?
Weird. Kind of spooky. Very
Yeah,
Walking Dead.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a kind of a night terrors thing, isn't it? Um,
I did think it was odd. I was like, it's been so long. I was like, and it is interesting because it is, I feel like, grief is a circle and not a line. But I did think it was odd that after so long to go back and to watch these characters sort of reprocess. Characters being Una or Uhura mostly, and then
yeah.
Una to a certain extent. I thought it was odd to have the callback, but I mean, it kept it interesting. I don't really have a problem with it. I was just like, oh my gosh, Hemmer, right? So I don't know. It was kind of fun, I guess. I don't really know. I don't really have a feeling.
I don't know what the situation was. Like, did they always plan to kill him, or did the actor have another opportunity or something like that? Because like Tasha Yar came back to TNG, but it was after she had made a movie or two or whatever, and they brought her back as Sayla or whatever. So it's like the actor's available. We live in a Star Trek world. I mean, I love Carol Kane, but can we just have him back? Like, it's just it's
Yeah.
weird. It's weird for him to come back and be so central to the episode, and be in new scenes and stuff like that. And it's all just so the actors can go, "Yep, he really is dead," and I'm getting over that. I'm getting over that. And he's like, "I'm right here. I'm in the episode." Because I really did like him as a character. I thought that he was a very unique character. But it is interesting to have them double down on that and then take the time to process that grief. Like when Tasha died, of course nobody mentioned it until at least the end of the first season, and then every once in a while, something that I really liked about writing in older Trek like TNG is that I feel like they had like a hopper of things for the characters. And so if a character was dealing with something completely different, if something in the hopper fit that, they would bring it out. And so the example is like The Measure of a Man. They have no obligation to ever mention that Denise Crosby existed ever again, and Captain Picard is trying to prove that Data is a thinking, feeling being, and he's on trial, and he's like, check this out, what's this, and it's his little thing of Tasha Yar. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, Tasha Yar. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they would, like you said, it's not your daddy's Star Trek. They've got 10 episodes instead of 26. So they're like, let's do a thing where we get like a bunch of characters' reactions to this and how it affects them. And they also did a thing that's good writing usually in an ensemble cast is like you take, who hasn't been together? Pelia hasn't been with number one, and let's put Kirk with Uhura, and let's put all these characters and have them do their own little things. And so I think that paid off pretty well. But yeah, why not just bring it back? It's just use time travel. We've had, God, there's so many Kirks on this show. Just
I guess,
get,
but also
or
it's
get
like
his
what I
brother.
liked
His brother
about
is
Hemmer's
orange.
death
Yeah,
is that it was unexpected and there wasn't really a reason for it.
right.
And
That's
I
bad
feel
writing.
like, is it bad writing though, or
It
is
is.
it?
It's a shock
But is
value.
it? But I liked
Let's
it
just shock
because
people.
it was like, these days it's so easy to expect to be like, oh well, I know that he dies because this actor didn't re-up their contract, or I know he's not actually dead because I know that whatever,
We
or there's no way I can tell by the writing of this episode that this character is going to come back.
we're watching a show where aliens stole Spock's brain, so Scotty put a remote control on him and then had him just walk around the entire episode. They can do anything in this world, and Hemmer breathed in too much Gorn dust, and so he's going to have Gorns pop out of him. And it's like they just killed him to just show people, oh, anybody can die on this show. No, they can't. Just that guy can die.
I
And
guess. I guess that's a really good point.
And I do think that sadly this episode confirms he's not coming back. But I do think that if you do that, then having an episode like this in your second season where we kind of circle back and see how that affected people is important to do. And so I'm glad they did that. I just wish that, like, what do we know about Uhura? She likes music and she sings, and her parents died in a shuttle crash, which is like, I think they invented that. I don't remember. That was never in TOS, or maybe it was in a book or something like that. And so that's the only thing that defines her. We know that, like, Ortegas flies the ship. Uhura's parents died on a ship. Like, I wish that we could get. I wish this was my daddy's Star Trek. What about 20 episodes? I'll bargain. What about 15 episodes? Give us 15 episodes. Come on.
I know I would just die if they would give them more episodes per season. I don't know why they don't.
Yeah. Well, maybe they. I don't know. Maybe they will now.
It must be some weird numbers thing with, like, the execs and, like, marketing is like a 10-episode season.
It's easier to sell, yeah.
Yeah.
And package, yeah. Plus, they've got, like, 4 or 5 shows on, or they did. So,
yeah.
With Discovery going away, and with well, I guess Strange New Worlds is the only other live action. Maybe they can expand it more. But anyway, yeah. What else? Space hippies. That Ramon got the raw end of the deal. And, like, I like when Uhura is she's suffering her own hallucinations, and so she's like, allow me to list the 5 things that the audience knows about me. But I don't like cookies. Sometimes when I'm in a stressful situation, I refuse cookies. But, like, she's got a stun gun. Just everybody's reaction should be stun first, figure things out later, right? If you've got a non-lethal way to make somebody go sleepy bye, the first thing you do is go, please stop. No, okay, all right, no, get him out of there. But yeah, he blew it up real good. I can't think of anything else to say. I mean, I absolutely can, but I can't think of any. I can't think of anything else positive to say. Spock and Chapel.
Yeah.
Why now?
Why?
You get the feeling. I think this kind of person can't exist. I feel like Chapel is the person who has, because we've already seen her, big up, like, people, like, give them advice to, like, go for it. But, like, when it comes to her, she doesn't take her own advice. There are people like that exist. But, like, she seems pretty, she literally goes and talks to, like, AT&T aliens, to get old Spock back. And then he's back, and right? And then the next episode, she's like, let's, maybe she's thinking, I shouldn't have taken this chess date. I shouldn't have. He called the next day. I should have screened it, but here I am. I'm playing chess with butt plugs. I should not be doing this. Why would she, is she the person to be like,
I mean, he did just, in theory, either break off or is taking a break from his engagement.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit like, let's just take a second. Also, if I was in Starfleet, I would not, and I was Chapel, I would not want to be like, hey, this relationship that is going to inevitably blow up in a massive way. Let's go tell our bosses together.
We got to fill out the forms. We got to do the whole
Let's fill out the
thing.
paperwork, because and everyone on this ship who knows you have a fiance, and many people on the ship who have seen and met your fiance, let's go ahead and just say, we thought we'd just try this out while they're on a break.
Right. Yeah. I hope that they, I mean, they're not going to give an entire episode to this, but I hope that we continue to see that. Well,
they did.
Yeah, if the next time they bring T'Pring back. Anyway, I just think it's interesting. I mean, in order to have conflict, one of them's got to be like, oh, I don't really know, and the other one's got to be like, no, this is great. You just think that, like, it would be Chapel's the one who's kind of pursued this. The dam is burst, and maybe Spock would be the one who's like, well, now I'm putting together a pros and cons list. Now I'm applying logic. Who's better? Is this a good idea? Am I paralyzed by my logic? But the scene wasn't really even long enough for us to get that.
Yeah.
That
I think he is more also, and maybe Chapel knows this, I think Spock is more playing by the rules than he is like, let's make this official, sweetheart.
Right, but
he's like, I am fraternizing, therefore paperwork must be filed.
Filling out the forms could be his version of that, though, because he could, if he's a human, the next day he's like really clingy, and he's like, I think we should go to the next level. Like, I've never felt like anybody like this about anybody. But as a Vulcan, him being like, this is like, going to the justice of the peace for him. Like, he's like,
maybe you're right.
But it didn't play. They didn't play it that way. They could have played it more that way. But there's just so much going on in the episodes. So, how about a YouTube series? Star Trek the YouTube series. We just go scene by scene.
Shorts.
And after they're done, they're like, click on the thing below to see what happens next.
Click the button with the bell on it if you want Spock and Chapel to kiss.
Yeah, you're right. Star Trek the TikTok, and it's just like it's a video of Kirk saying, "Risk is our business," and then Spock's just like,
"This guy."
Just
hit the plus button if you like this guy.
Anything else? You know what? We're over halfway through. How do you think it's going so far?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going fantastic. There's been some things that I didn't like that I thought that aired the first episode of the second season. I thought was pretty weak. As we recall, I opened the season pretty vicious with my commentary, which I don't usually do. But I think now, looking at it now, I'm like, yeah, slay.
I think
boots the house down.
I think it's got well, apparently I just can't be happy, but I think it's got the opposite problem or a different problem to what Discovery has, because Discovery has a little more time, a little more dilated in terms of like the storytelling. And we've talked about, or I've talked before, I don't want to speak for you, on Discovery about how they've got their like season long plot that they track that they tend to focus on a lot, and I think it's to the detriment of the more standalone stories. The problem I think that Strange New Worlds has is that I don't know where the show's going. I still don't know what it's about. I don't think that they should become Discovery. I think that they, consciously are trying to tell more standalone stories, but I think we're just trapped in now. Is it every week there's just going to be somebody's going to hear another weird sound, and then there's going to be something, and they're all going to go, oh, we figured it out. Like, is that just going to be it? Like, what's the show about? Like, where are we heading with it? And I think, God, I never thought I'd say this, but I think that I would prefer Discovery's attack of that.
Interesting.
If it's something that you watch every week for 10 weeks, 15 weeks or whatever, because then when you've got there, I don't know. We're all just trapped in this new world. If every 7 years they just burned all the VHSs and the DVDs and held you down and pied you, in the side of the head, and so you couldn't remember, and they just made new TV, that'd be one thing. But we've got all these old TV shows to compare to. Every show that is a cable show that's a premiere drama is like, we're going to be 6 Feet Under, we're going to be The Sopranos, we're going to be Mad Men or whatever. And
Succession.
Well, yeah. Do you think that
there's only one Succession?
Do you watch Succession?
Yeah, I'm not caught up. Okay. I've seen a couple of spoilers.
I don't watch it, but I assume that they feel the same way. They're like, we've got it. We are the.
Do you feel like
prestige drama?
Do you not watch it on purpose?
I saw the first episode. I'm like, I don't want to watch this. No, screw this. I don't. Adam McKay, unfortunately, a poet named Yeats wrote about people like Adam McKay. The best lack all conviction, the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And he went from fart comedies to political satire, and he has no idea how to make political satire, to the point where he made a movie about a comet, which we all knew was about climate change, starring some of the most famous stars in the world, and it wasn't funny, and everybody hated it. Both the people that it was preaching to and the people who don't believe in climate change. They all just hated it, and we just move on. And so I tried his show, and I was like, this isn't gonna tell me anything about the rich in America. It doesn't matter. But anyway, that's just my side thing about Succession. The point is, when they were making Succession, they're like, we've got to be like these old shows, and I don't think they do. You know, my new thing is like, just look, stop trying to. If I watched this new Star Trek and I didn't get it and it just went over my head, I think I would recognize that I didn't necessarily get it. But I feel like this butterfly can't get out of its chrysalis. It still wants to refer to old Star Trek. It still wants to bring all that back and appeal to everybody. And I say, forget it. Just appeal to people that will be alive in 20 years. You know, like, screw the old people. It doesn't matter. Just make something new. So anyway, that's all I had. If that's all you had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'd like to get something big from Pelia. That wasn't all I had. I'd like to have an episode that's just all Pelia. I want to see her.
She's great.
In period costumes. Every act is in a different period. So we start.
That would be good.
We start in the Stone Age. We work our way up to Victorian times.
You have it's a less than zero chance that you get that any week now.
And she could run into other Star Trek.
More than zero.
They can have their continuity porn. She could run into other Star Trek time travelers. So we could have there
we go.
Jonathan Frakes, Nick Fury, DH, Jonathan Frakes in San Francisco in 1906, hanging out with Jack London. There she is. That's my idea. Anyway, that's it for our show this week. Thanks for joining us, listeners. And if you like what you hear, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTPOD for updates and to get notified when new episodes are out. Tweet to us on the show by using the hashtag Discoverage or email us at EISTPOD@gmail.com. And while you're on the internet, why not head to your listening platform of choice? Give us a rating and a review. Subscribe to the show because it really does help us out. And if you really like the show, tell a friend and share it on social media. Discoverage will return next week, July 27th at 8 p.m. Central for the 7th episode of Strange New Worlds' second season, an episode titled Those Old Scientists. It's called Those Old Scientists.
Promising for your Pelia request.
Oh yeah, maybe. The only thing I can think of is they're doing a thing about how, you know, the Enterprise is always going somewhere and they go to a planet. There's like one guy that lives on it. He's an old scientist. He's got a hot wife. That's all I can think of. Maybe this will be a meta episode. Maybe. Fingers crossed. And fingers crossed that James Kirk is nowhere near it. We'll be here next Thursday to cover it. We'll be going live once again at 8 p.m. Central, so join us then. And follow us on Facebook or Twitter at EISTPOD to get notified when we're live and broadcasting. Ella, thanks as always for joining me to talk about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and remind people where they can find you online.
Thank you. Follow me at Gundor Gold anywhere.
Do that. A little side plug for a podcast that we talk about sometimes. Keep on Tolkien. I've been listening to them, and they recently did an episode about all the mentions of the First Age in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So anytime that
I'm not caught up.
Somebody sang a song for 10 pages, you know, it was about Gondolin or something like that. That's the kind of continuity porn that I like.
Podcast.
Lord of the Rings continuity porn. But yeah, so check them out. You can find me on Twitter at KA1IBAN, and you can find all of these shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at justenoughtrope.com. And that is it for us. Thanks for listening. We are signing off. This is Aaron for Ella saying, live long and prosper.